My name is Katherine Ellis. I'm 36 years old, and I own a small antique shop nestled in the historic district of Savannah, Georgia. Most people in town know me as the woman who wears old cardigans, drives a rust-colored Subaru, and closes her shop on Tuesdays so she can go feed the ducks by the river. Quiet, predictable, friendly in that soft kind of way. But if you'd asked anyone in my family who I was, they'd have said something different. They'd say I was the one who chose small, the one who didn't chase ambition. My mother Margaret, always in pearls and pressed linen, liked to call me modest to a fault. My sister Caroline used to joke that I was allergic to anything over $50. At every holiday dinner, while they compared luxury handbags and cruise destinations, I just nodded and passed the cornbread. I never minded being the quiet one. That changed the day I found out about the money. It started with a letter delivered in an unmarked cream envelope that looked like a wedding invitation. The return address said San Francisco, and the postmark was 2 days old. I opened it slowly, expecting maybe a customer's thank you note or a flyer. Instead, I found two things: a single-page letter and a certified check for $15 million. 15 million. The letter was from an attorney named James Dalton. He represented an estate I didn't recognize, Lawrence B.C. Aldwell. My heart almost stopped when I read that name. I hadn't heard it since I was 15. Lawrence was my biological father, the man my mother refused to speak about for over 2 decades. All I knew was that their relationship was brief and bitter, and that he'd left before I was born. When I once asked about him as a teenager, Margaret told me sharply, "He gave you a last name and nothing else." She was wrong. I read the letter 3 times. It was brief and formal, but clear. Mr. Caldwell had recently passed away. In his will, he left his entire personal estate to his only child, Katherine Ellis, me. At first, I sat there for what felt like hours, my fingers trembling, eyes dry and unblinking. It didn't feel real. I hadn't even known he was alive. And now, out of nowhere, I was holding the kind of money that could buy 10 versions of my life. I didn't tell anyone right away. For 5 days, I just went on like nothing had happened. Opened the shop, sorted antique teacups, said good morning to Mrs. Teller next door, and fed the ducks. But every night, I stared at that letter like it was some sort of ghost. On the 6th day, I told my sister Caroline. I don't know why I did. Maybe I needed to say it out loud to believe it. Maybe I thought she'd smile and hug me and tell me I deserved something good. Instead, she stared at me, blinked once, and said, "Are you serious?" When I nodded, she didn't hug me. She sat down and leaned forward like a banker in a loan meeting. "Okay," she said. "So, what are you going to do with it?" I told her I didn't know yet. I was still trying to figure out what it all meant. I needed time. Caroline didn't like that answer. Her eyes narrowed slightly and her tone shifted. "Catherine, you don't actually think that money is yours, right? I mean, technically, okay, maybe. But you have to admit, it's kind of crazy to keep it all." I didn't answer. She kept going. "He wasn't even part of your life. He didn't raise you. Mom did. We did. It's kind of messed up that he just dropped this on you, and now you're walking around with $15 million like it's no big deal." That night I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me, slowly slicing the darkness. It was the beginning. By the end of the week, everyone in the family knew. Not because I told them, but because Caroline did. I got calls from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My Aunt Rachel sent a Bible verse about generosity, followed by a second message that said, "Just a thought, sweetie." Even my youngest cousin Brian, the one who'd stolen money from my purse at a wedding, once texted me with, "Hey Kat, long time, just wondering if you'd be willing to help me with my student loans. No pressure, lol." And then came the worst call of all, Margaret. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was at the shop reorganizing old maps near the window when the landline rang. Only 3 people ever called that number, and she was one of them. "Hello, Catherine," she said in that clipped, cold way. "I'm hearing some rumors. I'd like to know what's going on." I didn't lie. I told her the truth. Word for word, the way it was written in the letter. She went silent. Not shocked, just eerily quiet. Then, so you think that money belongs to you? I didn't ask for it, Mom. No, you just accepted it. She hung up before I could say another word. That night, I dreamed that my hands were covered in dirt. No matter how hard I scrubbed, they wouldn't come clean. The change didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly, like fog over water, one remark here, one look there. And before I could name it, I was drowning in it. The next time I saw Caroline was at brunch the following Sunday. She chose a little place downtown, with marble-top tables and overpriced omelets. When I arrived, she was already seated, sipping a mimosa, her nails freshly done. I barely had time to sit before she leaned in. So listen, she said, brushing invisible lint off her sleeve. I've been thinking. You know how Jason and I have been looking at houses. There's this one in Buckhead. 3 bedrooms, all updated appliances. It's just a little out of reach right now. But with your help. I blinked. You want me to buy you a house? No, of course not, she said quickly, eyes wide with faux innocence. Just help with the down payment. I mean, it's not like you're going to use all that money yourself, right? You live in a 1-bedroom, and you've always said you don't care about fancy things. I stared at her. So because I don't care about money, I should give it to you. She laughed a tight, awkward sound. Katherine, don't be dramatic. I'm your sister. I didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. I just paid the check and left early saying I had to open the shop. That week I found a letter on my windshield. No envelope. Just a folded piece of paper typed unsigned. It's greedy to hold on to money you didn't earn. Remember who was there for you all your life. Don't forget blood. I recognized the font Georgia 12-point, the kind of Caroline used for every essay in high school. I didn't confront her. What would I even say? Instead, I went to see Mom. She lived alone in a 3-bedroom colonial just past the parkway. The door was open when I got there, and I heard the television on in the background. She didn't get up when I walked in. She just turned the volume down and said, "Sit." I sat on the edge of the sofa, palms resting on my knees. I never told you about Lawrence, she began. Her voice wasn't soft. It was businesslike, like she was filing paperwork in her head. He was wealthy, yes, but selfish. He didn't want a child. Didn't want responsibility. I made the right decision. I nodded. I wasn't here to argue. I just wanted something real. So why did he leave it to me? I asked. After all these years, she didn't answer right away. Then guilt, probably. Or maybe he wanted to disrupt my life. He was cruel like that. I looked at her, searching for any trace of grief. But all I saw was tightness around the eyes. Cold. I haven't decided what to do with it, I said softly. You'll do the right thing, she said, standing up. You'll remember who your real family is. She didn't hug me when I left. The pressure built slowly. Phone calls, letters. Caroline started dropping by the shop unannounced, always with some new idea for how to spend the money, college funds for her kids, a shared beach house, a family foundation. One day, she came with a spreadsheet. Look, she said, laying it on the counter beside a 1920s music box I'd just restored. I crunched the numbers. If you gave everyone in the family just $1 million each, just one, you'd still have $3 million left for yourself. More than enough. I looked at the paper, rows of names, exact figures. Brian even had a note next to his needs to pay off both loans and buy a reliable car. Caroline, I said, voice trembling slightly, this isn't a group project. She went quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, that smooth, practiced smile she used on clients when she used to sell real estate. You know, it's really not about the money. It's about fairness. You were handed a fortune by a man who didn't even raise you. And the rest of us, we've struggled. We've worked. We've earned everything. You didn't. That stung. Not because it was true, but because deep down, I'd already been asking myself the same thing. Did I deserve it? Did this money make me someone else? That night, I didn't go home. I drove down to Tybee Island instead. Just me, the waves, and a cooler full of lemon water. I sat on the sand, shoes off, staring at the black sky, and thinking about what it meant to owe people. Not in dollars, but in gratitude. In debt you never agreed to. When I came home the next morning, Caroline was on my front porch. She was holding Mom's old wedding album. "What's that?" I asked. She held it up like a weapon. A reminder. "This family built you. Everything you are, everything good in you came from us. Don't forget that." Then she added, like it was a final line in a movie, "We gave you our love, Kat. Now it's your turn to give back." I didn't answer. I just walked inside and closed the door. They called it a family meeting, but it felt more like an ambush. It was Caroline's idea, of course. She said we should all talk openly and clear the air. The invitation came as a group text, something she rarely used, sent to me, Aunt Rachel, Brian, Mom, and 2 cousins from Charlotte I hadn't seen since Grandpa's funeral. They chose Aunt Rachel's house for the gathering. A neat, sterile home with too much faux marble, and air that always smelled faintly of lavender and disinfectant. I brought a store-bought pound cake more out of habit than politeness and placed it on the table. No one touched it. We sat in a circle, me on a stiff love seat between Caroline and Brian, Mom directly across from me in a wingback chair, arms folded. Aunt Rachel took notes like a secretary at a deposition. Caroline opened with a soft voice. "Too soft. Catherine, we love you. That's the only reason we're here." I nodded slowly. "But we're concerned about how all this sudden wealth is affecting you." "Sudden wealth," I repeated. Like I'd won a game show. She smiled brittle. "You've changed." Aunt Rachel jumped in. "When you were younger, you never would have let something like this divide the family. We used to be so close," Brian snorted. "She used to have $10 in her bank account, that's why." "Brian," Aunt Rachel said sharply, but her lips twitched with agreement. Mom hadn't spoken yet, but her silence was a form of dominance. She just stared at me, her eyes dry and distant, like I was a puzzle she didn't like the look of. I cleared my throat. "So what exactly is this meeting about?" "We've prepared something," Caroline said. She pulled out a printed packet. Stapled, color-coded tabs. She handed it to me like it was a business proposal. "The Ellis Family Allocation Plan," I read aloud. She leaned in. "It's a breakdown of how we think the money could be shared fairly. This way no one feels left out. No one's taken advantage of." I flipped through it. Page after page of suggestions, amounts, investments, joint purchases. A scholarship fund in the family's name. A vacation property for legacy building. Mom's medical bills are pre-covered. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "You expect me to give all of it away." "It's not giving it away," Caroline said quickly. "It's setting things right." "I didn't steal this money," I said. "I didn't take it from any of you." "No," Mom said finally. "You just decided we weren't worth sharing it with." I looked at her. "You hated him. You didn't even want me to know his name. And you were happy not knowing," she snapped. "Until he threw money at you. Then suddenly he's your father." The word hung in the air like smoke, ugly, sour, sharp. Caroline stepped in again. "Catherine, we're not here to fight. We just want to understand what you're thinking. Because from the outside, it seems like you're being selfish." That word again. I looked at the faces around me, faces I'd known my whole life. I remembered Caroline braiding my hair before school dances. Brian and I sneak sodas at family barbecues. Mom was holding my hand during my first flu. But now they looked like strangers wearing familiar skin. "You said you loved me," I said. "That's why you're here. But if I had nothing, if that letter never came, you wouldn't be sitting here." "That's not fair," Caroline said. "It's not wrong," I replied. The air was thick now, heavy with unsaid things. Aunt Rachel cleared her throat. "What if we take a vote?" "A vote?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "We're a family." Families make decisions together. Let's put it to a vote who thinks Catherine should share the money according to the plan. One by one hands went up. Caroline, Brian, Aunt Rachel, the cousins, even Mom. I just sat there frozen. 7 hands. And me. My stomach twisted not from anger but heartbreak, because I'd spent so many years thinking we were close, that they loved me, that we had something deeper than obligation. You've all already decided, I said, voice soft. You didn't ask me here to talk. You asked me here to agree. Catherine Mom said, voice flat. Now don't make this harder than it needs to be. You've always done the right thing. Be the bigger person. I looked down at the pound cake, untouched. Condensation is forming on the clear plastic lid. It suddenly felt like the only honest thing in the room. I stood up. I won't be distributing anything, I said. Not because I don't care about you, but this money has nothing to do with you. It's a mess I didn't ask for. And I won't fix it by breaking myself. You're making a huge mistake, Brian said. Caroline stood too. You're choosing money over your own family. I looked her dead in the eyes. Number, I'm choosing peace. I walked to the door. My hands were shaking, but I didn't look back. As I opened it, Mom said quietly, "Don't come crying when you end up alone." I paused, not to answer but to let the silence say what I couldn't. Then I closed the door behind me. That night, I sat in the bathtub, fully clothed water, lukewarm eyes open. I didn't cry, but I felt something else rise up in me. Not anger, not pride, resolve. I didn't speak to anyone in my family for 2 weeks after that night. Not a single call, not a knock on the shop door, not even a passive-aggressive email from Aunt Rachel. At first it felt like relief. Silence the kind I hadn't felt in months. But by the 4th day, it settled in differently. The house felt heavier. The corners are darker. Even my antique shop felt less warm, like all the soul had drained out of the wood and into something hollow. Then the packages started arriving. The first was from Caroline. I found it on my front porch one morning. No note, just a box wrapped in pale blue tissue paper. Inside was a framed photograph of us as children. I may be 6 years old, with missing front teeth and knees covered in grass stains. Her already polished, already posing one arm thrown carelessly around my shoulder. On the back, she'd scrawled, "Don't forget who you were." The second package came the next day. A letter from Mom, typed addressed formally to Katherine Ellis, and signed at the bottom like a stranger. We all make decisions we regret. I only hope you'll see sense before the family fractures beyond repair. Blood isn't replaceable, I didn't answer. But I saved the letters. Then the campaign went public. Caroline posted a long status on Facebook, cryptic dramatic designed to draw pity. Something about how money reveals people's true character and how painful it is when someone you love turns their back on everything that matters. The comments came quickly. Some were old neighbors, praying for your family, sweetie. Others were more direct. Entitlement is a disease. She owes you. I didn't respond. I didn't even log in. But word travels fast in a small town. A week later, someone threw a rock through the front window of my shop. It didn't look like the glass shattered like silver. When I came running, I found the rock displayed next to the broken cabinet. Taped to it was a note. "You're not better than us. Please leave." Took a statement. They were happy to shop. I slowed away from the house, slightly amused, like he'd already heard the story, like he already had the truth. I didn't lie. I cleaned the glass, boarded up the door, and reopened the next morning. Silence shifted. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a check. The original one. I'd never cashed it. Not because I didn't plan to, but because part of me still hadn't accepted that it was real. I picked up the phone and called James Dalton, the attorney from San Francisco. He answered with warmth in his voice like he'd been expecting me. "Miss Ellis, I was wondering when you might reach out. I have questions, I said. Of course. We talked for nearly an hour. He told me more about my father, Lawrence Caldwell, how he'd followed my life from afar quietly. How did he know about my shop? He'd come through Savannah once, but never introduced himself. He didn't want to disrupt things, James said. He didn't think he deserved a place in my life. He didn't leave the money to repair the past, James told me gently. He left it so you'd have choices, so you'd be free. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I made a decision. I sold the shop, not out of bitterness, not to run away, but because I realized I no longer wanted to exist halfway between who I was and who I might become. I wanted a new space, one untouched by whispers and expectations, a place I could fill with quiet on my terms. I found a small home on the coast of Maine, a weathered gray cottage with white shutters and a porch that looked out onto a stretch of rocky shoreline. The town was small, smaller than Savannah, and no one knew my name. That was the beauty of it. I didn't tell anyone I was moving. I just packed my things, loaded the Subaru, and left before dawn. As I crossed state lines, I didn't feel guilty. I felt something cleaner, like wind through an open window, like oxygen. The money, once a source of shame and pressure, became something simpler, a tool. I hired a contractor to fix up the cottage. I bought new bookshelves, planted roses, and adopted a golden retriever from the local shelter. I named him Henry. Some nights, I still thought about them. Caroline probably fuming, unable to believe I'd actually walked away. Mom staring out her kitchen window, thinking silence was the final punishment. Brian probably back to scraping by telling everyone his cousin stole a fortune. But most nights, I didn't think of them at all. Instead, I listened to the waves, made tea, and wrote in a journal I hadn't touched since I was 25. Not every entry was happy, but each one was mine. And for the first time in my adult life, so was the quiet. The first letter came 6 months later. It was from my mother. I found it tucked between the local utility bill and a seed catalog in the mailbox at the end of my gravel drive. The envelope was thin, my name scrawled in a shaky cursive I hadn't seen since she used to write lunch notes when I was in middle school. I carried it inside but didn't open it right away. I made tea, fed Henry. Saturday on the porch, with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, the wind biting at the edges of my face. Only then did I slit it open with the corner of a butter knife. Katherine, I don't know where to begin. I could tell you that I was scared. I wanted to protect you. I never meant for things to go this far. But the truth is, I was ashamed. Of him, of myself, of the choices I made. When that money came to you, it felt like a punishment to me. A reminder that everything I buried had come back. But you didn't deserve the way we treated you. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not even sure I deserve a reply. But I needed you to know I was wrong. Love, Mom. I read it twice. Then a third time. And I cried. Not because it fixed anything, but because it was the first time in my life she admitted she was human. A few days later, I wrote her back. It wasn't a long letter, just a few paragraphs. I told her I was safe. The cottage was small but beautiful. I'd adopted a dog and learned to cook stew from scratch. I didn't mention the money. I didn't need to. Weeks passed. Then months. A letter from Brian arrived, less emotional, more curious. He asked if I'd seen the new Marvel movie, and if Henry liked the snow. A postcard came from Aunt Rachel, of all people, showing the Grand Canyon and signed, "We all miss you," even if we didn't say it right. Caroline didn't write. And I stopped waiting for her to. The town in Maine slowly became home. People learned my name not because of a story or a scandal or a check, but because I was kind. Because I volunteered at the library and baked too many cookies and walked Henry every morning without fail. There was a bookstore on Main Street run by a retired professor named Lou. He had a wheezy laugh and liked to argue about Hemingway. Every Thursday, I brought him a new pie, and he gave me a used paperback I'd never heard of. That became my ritual. Life in its quiet way wrapped around me like a soft sweater. Unflashy. Warm. I didn't spend all the money. In truth, I barely touched most of it. I set up a trust for a women's shelter back in Savannah, anonymous, no names attached. I funded repairs at a crumbling library in a part of the city no one liked to talk about. And once I paid off the vet bills for a woman I met at the dog park after her husky got sick. She never knew it was me. That was enough. One spring evening, I sat on the porch watching the sun dip low, the sky turning that pale lavender that only lasts a few minutes before night. Henry lay at my feet, snoring softly. The wind shifted, bringing the smell of sea salt and pine. I pulled my sweater tighter and let my eyes close just for a moment, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Caroline, not at Mom, not even at Lawrence, the man who never showed his face but changed everything with one final act of presence. I didn't need them to say they were sorry, because I had already let go. What I held onto now was mine. Not just the inheritance, but the stillness, the choice, the peace. People think wealth changes you. Maybe it does. But what changed me wasn't the check. It was realizing I didn't have to keep proving myself worthy of being loved. I could just be. And in that finally I was free. Katherine Ellis's story began with a quiet life in Savannah, Georgia, an antique shop owner with a modest lifestyle and a family that never quite saw her. Everything changed when she received an unexpected $15 million inheritance from her estranged biological father, Lawrence Caldwell, a man her mother had spent years erasing from memory. What should have been a moment of self-reflection turned into a firestorm of entitlement. Her family, once indifferent, turned ravenous. Her sister Caroline led the charge, demanding that Katherine do the right thing and share the money. A family meeting soon became a confrontation, and Katherine was left with a choice: sacrifice her peace or sever the ties. She chose peace. Katherine sold her shop, left Savannah, and rebuilt her life in a quiet Maine town by the sea. With Henry, her rescued golden retriever, and a small circle of kind strangers, she found something the money never promised: clarity. The inheritance didn't elevate her, it revealed everyone else. Over time, small gestures of remorse trickled in. Her mother's letter broke years of silence, and though the wounds were deep, they no longer bled. Katherine let go, not to forget, but to be free. She didn't spend the fortune recklessly. Instead, she used it to help others quietly, choosing anonymity over recognition, kindness over grandeur. In the end, Katherine understood that her worth was never in what she owned, but in what she refused to surrender: her self-respect, her boundaries, and the quiet dignity of choosing her own path. Her story isn't one of revenge, but of release, of walking away without slamming the door, of finding peace not by being loved by others, but by learning to love the silence they left behind.